Penguin Random House Audio presents The Last Diving Horse in America, Rescuing Gamal and Other Animals, Lessons in Living and Loving. This is the author, Cynthia A. Branigan. Prologue. Gamal, the horse who would become mine, was born in the early 1950s, as was I. For all I know, we entered the world in the same year, month, and day. He, a Texas native, went on to the more traditional horse pursuits of barrel racing and rodeos before being tapped for the unconventional career of diving. I was born in suburban New Jersey, and it was my father's fond hope that after he invested in my education and travel, I enter a respectable profession of some sort. Instead, I became an inveterate rescuer of displaced animals. It was through our disparate occupations that Gamal and I wound up together. We had help getting together, help that could be traced to two dissimilar yet equally headstrong men. Doc Carver, creator of the Diving Horse Act, was born just before the Civil War on the edge of America's fast-disappearing frontier. Carver was expected to follow in his father's footsteps, either as a doctor or, as he did briefly, a dentist. Instead, he toured the world with diving horses while also showcasing his considerable sharpshooting skills. Cleveland Amory, scion of one of Boston's founding families, was born as America was entering World War I. His early life followed a prescribed route. Prestigious boarding school followed by Harvard. But although he became a renowned writer, he devoted the last quarter of his life to advocating for animals. There was a time when horses, flying through the air, could have been said to reflect the promise of America, the notion that anything, even the impossible, was possible. But as the decades wore on, people began to see the Diving Horse Act as little more than animal cruelty. Eventually, diving horses became no more than a vacationer's distant memory. That might have been the end of it, but there was one more chapter to be written in the diving horse saga, my relationship with the last of those horses. Chapter 1. In 1980, on West 57th Street in New York, you could set your watch by the chanting of the Hare Krishnas. Every afternoon at 5 o'clock, the saffron and claret and tangerine-robed throng serenaded Midtown with an ecstatic, impassioned a cappella performance punctuated by a trembling tambourine. Actually, I heard them before I saw them, faintly when they rounded the corner of 7th by Carnegie Hall, louder as they moved east toward the Russian Tea Room, and louder still as their spiritual conga line reached the office building of the Fund for Animals, where I was working. From a large bay window, I would gaze down at them as they snaked along the street, their daily devotional drifting from the gum-stained sidewalk, rising up the elegant but soot-covered building, and permeating the dingy windows. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Some of the other employees must have taken the song and dance routine as a sign from God that they should straighten their desks, pack their belongings, and call it a day. No one looked at me to see how long I was staying. By now they knew that I was more the 10 to 6 type or even the 11 to 7 type, and no one was willing to stay at the office that late. And why should they? They arrived hours before I did. When they realized I was not watching them, they stopped watching me. In fact, I barely noticed their departure. My interest was in the show on the street. It wasn't the Krishna's bright swirling hues or exotic sounds that caught my attention, although I could hardly be blamed if it was. Between New York's precarious financial footing and skyrocketing crime rate, these were bleak, even dangerous times in the city. Any pop of color or hint of optimism was a welcome respite. Neither was my interest in their ritual a result of my being shocked by every sight and sound in New York. I may not have been a native New Yorker, but I grew up little more than an hour away. It was vital to my father, if not always to me, that I be well-traveled and well-educated, someone who hailed from New Jersey, not Jersey. When we weren't traveling the world, we were visiting the crossroads of the world, New York. Although I was affected by the Krishnas, surely it was not in the way they intended. I experienced no subsequent compulsion to bolt from the office, renounce my few worldly possessions, and join the devotees. My fascination was more practical than spiritual. They seemed not only to have discovered their calling, but knew what to do with it once they did. I could not say the same for myself. My twin passions, wanting to write and wanting animals in my life, had been whispering in my ear for as long as I could remember. In greyhound racing circles, they might have said I came out of the box with early speed. My mother unleashed a monster when, between music and art appreciation, she also taught me to read. By age 3, I had exhausted her homemade curricula and insisted on attending kindergarten. My parents enrolled me at the only school that would accept a child my age, a Victorian-era relic directed by its equally old-fashioned founder, Miss Ireland. By age 5, I grabbed my crayons, found some index cards, and wrote my first story, The Book of a Kid's Life. The plot? Thinly disguised propaganda. A girl refuses to take a nap unless her mother agrees to get both a cat and a dog from the local shelter. The mother relents, and both creatures become part of the family. Using a writer's prerogative, I dropped the nap subplot. In real life, my desire for animal companions was only partially fulfilled. We always had a cat or two, ragged males we found, or who found us. These scrawny, dirty, beat-up toms walked the thin line between feral and domesticated. With enormous scarred heads and equally oversized testicles, their pleading eyes told a cautionary tale of what comes of being a slave to lust. If any stick-thin female cat tried to slither in our door, she would be whisked to an uncle's farm to live out her life as a mouser in an empty barn. Once there, I would never see her again, but I would never forget her either. I was given to understand that acquiring a dog was an impossibility. My father declared that they were too much trouble, had to be walked, had to be licensed, and, worst of all, held the potential to bite. He knew my proclivity for picking up and snuggling cats. I had the scars to prove it. But with a dog, the consequences of unwanted affection could be worse. So I made do with the old toms and an assortment of short-lived creatures, birds and fish and hamsters, whose fragile bodies I carried home in flimsy containers from Woolworths. Having no brothers or sisters, these animals became my de facto siblings. Perhaps in the same way that I assumed the Krishnas were living out their dream, others might have assumed the same of me. After all, I was working side by side with author Cleveland Amory, the legendary founding father of the modern animal protection movement and president of the Fund for Animals. Yet I experienced my position as something of a double-edged sword. I had nearly free rein to choose and complete my own projects. And certainly, by sitting at the feet of the master, I was exposed to people and ideas I would otherwise have missed. But I had trouble finding my voice in the presence of such an august figure. None of the tasks I had tried, lobbying, picketing, or even working on the fund's publications, had really been a good fit. It seemed that Cleveland was better at everything than I was, and I was left to wonder what, if anything, I really had to offer. Cleveland Amory was the dominant figure in animal welfare. The towering Boston Brahmin with a booming voice and...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?